This lecture will cover the creation of all the InfoProveedors required for our application. We will create the following objects. You'll create an actual volumes open DSO called tvol v00. We will create a planned volumes DSO tvol a20, a planned revenues ADSO trev a10, and a planned prices ADSO trpc a10. We will cover the creation of a single ADSO for planning, and the rest can be created based on the info object list provided on page 5 of the guide. Once we've created our ADSOs, we will create 2 composite providers and allocate our ADSOs and open DS views to those composite providers. So let's create our ADSO. Now I've already created all the content, and in this case I'm going to create a tvol a201 for demonstration purposes. So there's 2 places we can create our DSO. The first is we can right click on our info area, say new, and select data store object advanced. Or if we already have created ADSOs, simply click on the folder and select data store object advanced. I'm going to create tvol a201. I'm going to call it planned volumes. And that's it. We're not going to use any templates. Then in the next screen, we can either select it and set our external SAP HANA view. So let's do that. And then we need to select the modeling properties. Now we want to select all characteristics as key and also planning mode. So as soon as we select all characteristics as key, we can actually select planning mode, or we can simply select from the model template planning on InfoCube like. Next, we go to details. In this screen, we add all our info objects, and it's good practice to put our info objects in groups. So it starts off with the first group, and I'm going to call this group material. And the description is material as well. And then we simply add our info objects by clicking on info objects, and I'm going to add 0 material and 0 plant. We can then add further groups and add all the info objects as per page 5 of the guide. And of course, once you're done with setting up the ADSO, you need to activate it. So you simply click on activate the BW object. Now, since I'm not going to use it, I'm going to delete it. So to delete the object, you simply click on the dustbin and delete. Now let's look at what the ADSO should look like. So in tvol a20, I've got my planning enabled DSO with all the info objects as per page 5. So once your ADSO looks like that, please create the rest of the ADSOs. The creation of the open ODS view is a little bit more involved. The ODS view we are going to create will be linked to a HANA view on the COPA ADSO. The first step is to create the HANA view. First, we need to go to the SAP HANA modeling perspective and run the following SQL as an example in the SQL console. So we will set the schema name to whatever your schema is, and we select from the COPA ADSO. In our case, the COPA ADSO is Z COPA A10, and like always, we select from the 7 table, and then you can have whatever wet2 clauses you require. So as soon as you've executed this code, you will have a view under your schema, and we can open the data preview as well. And there we can see the data. So this is the data we're going to access in real time from the COPA ADSO. The next step is to create our OpenDS view. So we go and right click and say new open ODS view. And the DSO I'm going to create is tvol v01 because I've already created the v00, and the description will be actual volumes. Then the semantics is a fact. Next, we select the source type, which will be a database table or view, and we're going to set it from an existing source system. So we select our source system, and we select our view, which is v_. tvol, and there's our view, and then we look at our confirmation page, we're happy with all the settings, and then simply finish. So the next step we need to do is to set up the fields. So we go to the Facts tab, and we'll see that all the fields in our view is now listed, and the first thing we need to do is move our fields to the characteristic key, because we want all these fields to be keys. The next thing we need to do is to move unit to unit, and we'll check our key figure. So quantity is there. Right, now because these are fields and we use info objects in SAP BW, we want to associate all these fields to a SAP info object. This will allow us to use the master data, the same checks will be performed, and also the info objects will be subjected to the authorizations. Right, so to do that, I go to customer, for example, as an association with info object, and the info object is 0 customer. I can also choose it from a list, obviously. And then I also want to use the name of the info object. So it will use the names or the text fields stored for each info object. And we can see that the field is evaluated in authorization checks for the associated object. So if I have an analysis authorization on 0 customer, this field will now be subjected to the same authorization checks. So I'll do that for all my characteristics. I must also do that for my key figure. So in this case, 0 quantity will be associated with the info object 0 quantity and use the field. But I also need to associate my quantity with the unit. So I will go to unit, associate that with the info object 0 unit, use the field, and if I go back to 0 quantity, we will see that unit has now been associated with that. So I will do that for all the fields and then activate the object. So all my fields have been associated to info object. And once I'm happy with my OpenDSO view, I simply activate. The last step is to create the composite provider. So we're going to Eclipse again, and on composite providers, new composite provider. And we're going to call this composite provider TSL P11. And again, you created the P10 composite and sales planning. And finish. So we can create an external HANA view for this composite. So let's do that. And under scenario, we're going to add all the objects we require for this composite provider, which we can do by simply dragging and dropping the items. So the first item we want to include is our tvol VOO, so our OpenDS view for our actual volumes, and then select our planned revenues and planned volumes ADSOs. Now that we have a union of all these objects, we need to specify which fields in the mapping for the fields to the composite. And we simply drag all the objects to the target, and you'll see the fields are mapped. And if we look at our OpenDS view, because we associated them with BW info objects, they are also mapped to the info object. So we've got a mapping of all the objects within our composite. The only step that is left now is to activate. We now have all the objects we require. We have a virtual OpenDS view that will hold our actual volumes straight from COPA as it is based on a view. We've got a planned volumes ADSO, a planned revenues ADSO on a composite provider. In addition, we have our planned prices in the ADSO on its own composite provider. So let's move on to creating our aggregation levels and our filters.